What's up, guys? We are back again today working on the LQ4, and today we're going to go ahead and get started on our heads. So these are 823 LS heads, and we'll go ahead and clean them up. We're going to take the rockers, take the springs out, take all the valves out. We're going to blast everything with a soda blaster, and then as long as that turns out alright, I think we're going to try and use this shark hide. It's basically like a clear coat for aluminum. It helps keep it from getting all nasty and corroded. So we'll go ahead and do that. We're going to switch our springs out. You see a lot of guys run the 660 springs. We're going to go a step up from that and run the BTR SK702. These are a 685 spring kit. So we have those, and then we'll go ahead and take these rocker arms out. You want to replace these with a trunnion kit. So you can buy the trunnion kit from Brian Tooley Racing, or you can just buy the rocker arms with them already installed. I bought these before I got the heads, so I didn't realize that I was going to get a set of heads with my rocker arms already. So we'll go ahead and take these off, set them to the side, and then we have our main stud kit, or our head stud kit, excuse me, for our heads whenever we get that far. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and start taking these heads apart. Alright, we'll go ahead and start removing our rocker arms. Okay, so now that we have our rocker arms off, we can go ahead and take all of our valve springs out. So what we'll do is we'll get our valve spring compressor tool right here. I like these ones because you can do them with the head in or out of the engine. So what you'll do is it'll come with this piece right here, this aluminum piece. We'll put that in there like so. You'll put this together just like this. And then you'll see here where it says top, we'll put that on top of our aluminum piece, just like so. We have two bolts that will thread down in where our rocker arms mount. Just put those in like that. Tighten our two bolts down. And then we can take this nut, screw it down, and we can get a wrench. You don't want to use an impact on this because you'll increase your likelihood of breaking something. And we'll just tighten it all the way down. It'll push those valves down and we can get those keepers out. Now that we're tightened all the way down, we can go in there with a magnet, if you have a pocket screwdriver or a scribe or whatever, and we can take those keepers out, just like so. Now we can loosen it back up and our valve springs will come off. Now that that's loose, we can go ahead and take our two bolts back out. And we're good to go. Sometimes these will get stuck in here. Just go ahead and knock them out with a punch real lightly. It doesn't take much to get them out. But take our springs off, set them right here. Move all this back. And we're going to be getting rid of all this, but for now we'll just keep it all in order. And then now our valves will slide right out the bottom. We want to keep everything where it was before. So we'll stand our head up, slide our valves out. So that one went right there, and this one right here. So we'll go ahead and get the rest of them out, and I'll put a zip tie or something right here to mark which one's which and how we had it sitting on here. So when we go to put all of our valves back in, we'll put them in the spots they came out of. Alright, now that we have all of our valves out, the only thing left to do is pull our valve guides out. They come out pretty easily. I like to use these Knipex twin grip pliers because they have the V-jaw on the front, but you can use anything. As you'll see here, we'll just go in there like that. Give it a little twist, and it comes off super easy. So we go ahead and set that right there. Alright guys, so we're back today. It's a couple weeks later, and as you can see, we got the heads nice and cleaned up here. The reason that I didn't show them being blasted is because I actually had the machine shop do it. I ended up taking them in and getting them decked just to be safe, make sure everything was nice and flat whenever we go to put it together. And while they were there, I just had them blast it. So, as you can see, I think they turned out pretty decent. Not too bad. I went ahead and put the clear coat on it. I used this shark hide metal protection, and it went on really nice actually. It still gives you that nice matte finish, but it adds just a little bit of shine to it. So all in all, I'm happy with how they turned out. So next we can go ahead and clean up our valves. We'll just do that with a power drill and some Scotch-Brite real quick. And then after we get all of these cleaned up, we can go ahead and lap them into our heads and put our springs in. So let's get started on that. Alright, so we went ahead and started cleaning our valves up. We've gone from this. You can see all the carbon buildup and everything on there to something like this. As you can see, it is much cleaner, ready to go in. You see this one's been done. And here's what it looked like beforehand. Hopefully you can see all that nasty carbon and just junk on there. So what I did is I ended up spraying them with engine degreaser. I think the oven cleaner works a little bit better, but this will work too. I sprayed it on there, let it sit for about 5 or 10 minutes, scrubbed off what I could with just a wire brush real lightly, and then I went ahead and chucked it up in our drill and hit it with some Scotch-Brite, and that cleaned it up pretty well. And then finally I just went ahead and hit it with some brake clean and wiped everything clean. So we have 2 done. We'll go ahead and get the rest of them done, and then we'll get back and get ready to start lapping them. Alright, so we went ahead and cleaned up all of our valves. They didn't turn out too bad. So now that we have that done, we'll go ahead and lap all of our valves. Lapping the valves, what it does is it creates a nice seal between your valve and your head. So if you can see here, there's that little angle on your valve. You want that to seal up nicely with the corresponding angle on your head. So how we do that is you take our valve lapping tool. This is just a stick with a suction cup on the end. They make electronic ones, and I've also seen guys run a drill in through the bottom onto the valve and lap it that way. I still like doing it the old school way. So what we're going to do, as you can see here, this is one that hasn't been lapped. You see that angle? It's all not really cleaned up. And here is one that's already been done. And you can see that surface right there. So what we'll go ahead and do is we'll take our valve we'll put a little bit of oil on the valve stem. Wipe it in real quick. Then we will take our valve grinding compound. This is just a paste with like abrasive in it. So we'll put a little bit of that on the bottom of the valve. You don't need a whole lot. Then we'll go ahead and drop the valve down in. We'll take our tool, suction it on, and then we'll just go ahead and just like that. We'll go ahead and pull the valve out and wipe it off for you guys to see. It's still a little dirty, but as you can see, we now have a nice uniform surface there. As our sealing surface. This one needs a little bit more, so what we'll do is we'll just do the same thing, put it back in there, lap it a little bit more, and then we'll just go ahead and do all of them until we get them all done. Alright, so we went ahead and got all of our valves lapped. As you can see in here, we got some nice clean seats. And then on our valves, so I went ahead and water tested them. Basically all you do is you just put an old spark plug or something in this hole to plug it up. Put your valves in, fill the combustion chamber up with water. Let it sit for about an hour and make sure that it doesn't leak anywhere. We end up being good on both heads. Everything looks nice. So I'll go ahead, clean these heads up and the valves up real good and set everything up, and we'll go ahead and put the valves and the springs in next. Alright, we've went ahead and cleaned the heads and the valves and put everything together. You want to make sure you get all that grinding paste that we used to lap the valves out. Make sure there's none left over anywhere, especially in these valve guides. So now that everything's clean, we can go ahead and start installing our springs. We are using the BTR SK 702 685 springs. A lot of guys use the SK 001 660 springs. They're a real popular option. These are pretty much the same thing. They're just like a step ahead almost. So we'll go ahead and put those on. The only difference, it's pretty much the same thing that we did to take them off, but in reverse order. The only difference being the factory valve seals are one piece right here, and the BTR ones are two pieces. So this is our bottom piece. This will just set down on there like that. And then we have our actual seal piece. So this, I just dip it in oil, get it nice and coated. Like that. We'll go ahead and just set it on there. And then BTR makes a tool to install these. So as you can see, we already have our eyelet right here. This comes with the tool. We'll grab our tool right here and it just sets down on there. I like to push it down on just to start out with, just to make sure it's on there. And then we can grab some sort of a screwdriver, put it on top of the part and through the eyelet, and push down on it. And you will hear it snap down into place once it gets to the correct depth. And there we are. That's all it is. Take our tool off and we'll go ahead and do the rest of them. Okay, now that we have our valve seals on, we'll move on to the springs. As you can see, I already have the spring compressor tool on there. And then we'll just go ahead and drop our two springs and our two titanium retainers on there. We'll go ahead and put on the top of the spring compressor tool. Make sure they're semi-lined up over the valves. And And then we'll just tighten it down, and after we get it tightened down, we need to put our retainers in each one, right here. So go ahead, tighten this down, and get our retainers in. Now we might need to do a little prying gently on the spring to get everything to line up. So let's take a screwdriver. And that one lined up right there. And we'll get our other one in. Just like that. Grab two more. Sometimes they take a little messing around with to get them in there, but okay, now that we have our two retainers in, we'll just go ahead and loosen it nice and slowly. Hopefully they stay in place and everything seats. And there we are right there. So we'll go ahead and move on to the next ones. Alright, we have all of our valve springs on right there. And our other head. And if you'll notice, these two right here are different. So these are comp cams checking springs. Here's the part number right there. And what these allow us to do, the spring pressure is a lot lighter. So this is where our cylinder 1 will be. So we'll go ahead and put this on the passenger side bank. And this will allow us to check our piston to valve clearance. Okay, so here's our head. We have our two checking springs right here. Before we go ahead and assemble anything, we're just going to spray the back of these valves with WD-40 a little bit. And what that's going to do is when we use our clay to check our piston to valve clearance, that's going to keep the clay from sticking onto the valves and make sure it stays on the piston. So we'll just spray this down and then we'll go ahead and start assembling everything. Alright, we're back over here at the block. We have cylinder 1 right here. I went ahead and wiped the top of the piston off because like I said before, we want to make sure our oil is on the valves and in the head. And this is nice and clean so that way our clay sticks to the piston so we can check our depth. So I went ahead and wiped that off. We went ahead and put a couple studs in. You don't need to put them all in. I just did the ones around cylinder 1 and then a couple other random ones just to hold it in place. And then I went ahead and put my two head dowels in. So now that we have all that done, we can grab our two pieces of clay. I'm just using Play-Doh. We can go ahead and put it right there in our little valve pocket. That's good right there. And then we can go ahead and set our head on. It's kind of hard to do with the studs already on there. But there we are. And now we can go ahead and install a couple rockers and we'll do that and come back. Okay, we've went ahead and tighten a couple of nuts down. We just zipped them down real quick with the impact real lightly, just so that way it sits on there. And then we went ahead and put in two of our rocker arms and two of our push rods, and we just tightened these down to 0 lash. One thing I forgot to mention is if you already have a compressed head gasket, like the old one you took off, you can go ahead and put it in there. I don't have one. I just have the two new ones that I'm gonna be using. So I just set the head on the block, and when we do the math, we'll just add in the height of the compressed head gasket. So like I said, we tightened these down to no lash, and we can go ahead and turn our engine over, and if we did everything right, we should be able to check our piston to valve clearance next. Okay, now that we've taken our head off, we can go ahead and measure our thickness here. What we can do is we can take a brand new knife and just cut down the center nice and easy. Go ahead and take that one off. This one, we're probably not even gonna check it. We have more than enough right here. So you want minimum 80 thousandths for your intake and 100 thousandths for your exhaust. So we'll grab our dial calipers, and then we'll just go in there and measure it. And come over here where I can see. It looks like we have about 80 thousandths for our exhaust, and over 200 thousandths for our intake. One thing we need to do is we need to account for the thickness of our head gasket. So the head gaskets I'm going to be running have a thickness of 55 thousandths once they're smushed down. So we can take our measurements and add 55 thousandths onto that, and that will give us what our clearance is. So we appear to be pretty good for both of them. I got about 70 there again. So we'll add 50 thousandths to that. So we are well over both of our numbers that we wanted to hit. So we're good there. We'll go ahead and take this clay off. And now we should be good to go ahead and bolt down one of our heads. We can now go ahead and start putting our heads on. We're going to start with this side just because I didn't feel like changing out the checking springs on the other one yet. So we'll start by just putting our two little head dowels in, and we'll just lightly tap them in. Make sure we get them in there straight. Not like that. Next, we can go ahead and lay our head gasket on. I am using there's the part number right there, 126-22-033. These are the LS9 head gaskets. So we'll go ahead and put this on. We have our front-facing mark right there. So we'll just go ahead and set it on like that. Make sure it's on there. Now we can go ahead and grab our head and set it on top of that. So go ahead and drop it down on there. Line it up with the dowels. Just like that. And we can go ahead and start putting our head studs in. Okay, to put all of our head studs in, we're simply just going to thread them in hand tight. So this is the 2004 and newer head stud kit. So we're going to have these smaller studs and the bigger ones. So the bigger ones are going to go up front and inside, and then our smaller ones will go in the back facing towards the valley cover. We have this turn down point right here. That's going to go in the block. And then we have our Allen up here. So we're going to put them in. We're going to use an Allen to help us get them in. However, we're not going to torque them down. We're just going to go a little tight. Not even tight. We're just going to go hand tight. So as soon as we feel resistance on it, we're going to stop. Right there. So we'll go ahead and put the rest of them in, and then we can start putting our nuts on. Now that we have our head on and our studs in place, we can go ahead and put on our washers. So we have these smaller washers for the smaller studs in the back. Those we'll just put on there, no big deal. But these bigger ones, we have a bigger washer. And if you'll see, this side is smooth and this side has a texture on it. So ARP says to make sure there's no oil on this side. Make sure it's nice, clean, and dry. And then also do the same thing with the aluminum surface that this will sit on. So I just sprayed these down with brake clean real quick, made sure that there was no oil or anything like that. And we'll go ahead and put it with that textured side facing down. So we'll go ahead, put all those on, and then we will get our nuts on and started. And then we'll move on to torquing them next. Alright, we have all of our nuts on and hand tight. One thing I forgot to mention in the last clip is the same thing as what we did with the main studs. You want to take your ARP Ultra Torque that comes with the kit and you want to put it on the bottom of your nuts right here, and you want to lube the threads with it. Like I said before, you just want to make sure you don't put any on the bottom side of those washers. Those washers have that textured side on the bottom, so that way it digs into the block a little bit and keeps it from slipping whenever we're tightening it down. So with that done, we can grab our paper that came with our head stud kit. There's our part number right there for the kit we're running. And if you look at the bottom, we have our torque sequence. So we'll do 1 through 10, 25 foot-pounds, then we'll go to 50, and then 80. And then we'll tighten the smaller ones to 28 foot-pounds up top right here. And here's our sequence number. So we'll go ahead and torque everything down. And then we'll change our springs out on the other side, our checking springs, put our normal ones back in, and put that one on there and torque it down as well. Alright, we now have both heads on and torqued down. Everything looks good. So now we can go ahead and move on to our rockers and push rods. So we're going to go ahead and check our push rod length first. These are 7.425s. I'm like 90% sure that these are going to work, but we'll go ahead and check them anyways. So we have two push rod length checkers right here. We have all of our rockers. So what you can do, these rockers from the factory come with needle bearings inside. You can do a trunnion upgrade kit for fairly cheap, and I recommend doing those. That way you don't have all those little needle bearings. If one of these comes apart, it'll scatter all those little bearings all throughout your engine. So you can do the trunnion upgrade for anything over factory horsepower. It's a good idea. So what you can do is you can buy the trunnion upgrade and press them into your existing rockers, or you can just buy the rockers with them already pressed in. That's what I did. I bought mine from Brian Tooley Racing, but there's multiple other places that have them. There's the part number right there. So we have all of them. Trunnions are already pressed in. We have our bolts. We have our new rocker stands. So we'll go ahead and get set up over by the engine block and get ready to check our push rod length. Okay, we can now go ahead and check our push rod length. So to do that, we're going to grab our push rod length checker, and we have our intake here and our exhaust here. So if we're going to check our intake first, we need to drop this into our exhaust. So we're going to put it in there. We're going to make sure we're sitting on the lifter, and then we're just going to turn our engine over. When the exhaust lifter starts to raise, we know that our intake is on base circle, so we can check it. So we'll just turn the engine over, put light pressure on that until we feel our lifter start to lift up. Alright, and right there, it just started to raise. So now, we can go ahead and put it over into our intake side. Make sure we're down in there. And now we know our intake is on base circle. So we'll take that. We will grab our intake rocker. So for the LS3 style heads, you have two rockers. You'll have one, as you can see here, it's offset a little bit. and then this one will be kind of straight, pointing center. The offset one is your intake, and the straight one is your exhaust. So we will grab our intake one. This one's off center. We'll drop our rail in there, just like that. We'll make sure our push rod checker is sitting in the cup. Line everything up, and we'll put a bolt in there. We'll then go ahead and tighten our bolt down to 22 foot-pounds. After we've done that, if you'll see, we still have a lot of lash right there. That's all right. So what we're going to do is we're going to reach up in here, and it's kind of hard to see with my hands in the way. We'll twist the end of that push rod length checker until it comes up and makes contact with the backside of this rocker. So if I can give you a demonstration, basically that rod is sitting in there like this. We'll just continue to screw it out until we get rid of that play right there. Alright, we've got that push rod length checker set where we want it. If you can see here, there's no vertical lash this way. You can see there's a little bit of side-to-side movement. That's okay. We just don't want any rocking this direction. So now that we have this set, we can go ahead and take it apart. And we go ahead and just pull this push rod length checker out. You're going to make sure it doesn't spin any. And then we'll go ahead and measure this with a set of calipers and do the math to figure out what size we need. Okay, so we went ahead and pulled our push rod length checker out. We made sure not to move it any while we pulled it out. And then now we can just take a set of calipers and measure our length. So we are getting 7.30, we'll call it 7.305. So we have 7.305. I checked it a couple times just to make sure. I ended up getting 7.305 on both the intake and exhaust. Now we need to add our preload for a rocker arm into this length. So we're going to run 70 thousandths longer preload, which means we need to add 70 thousandths to this length. So we need a 7.375 length push rod. And the ones we have are 7.425. So it's not a big deal. We went ahead and ordered the correct size. They should be here tomorrow. I went ahead and emailed Brian Tooley Racing just to make sure that when we checked our piston to valve clearance with these ones, it wasn't going to affect anything, and we didn't need to recheck it when we switched to the smaller ones. So we're good there. Like I said, these will be here tomorrow. And in the meantime, while we're waiting on these, we can go ahead and do a couple other things. So we'll get started on those next. Okay, while we're waiting for our push rods to come in, we can go ahead and install our steam vent kit and our high ram intake. Now, just like the valley cover plate, we're not going to tighten any of this down because we're going to need to take it all back off to put the lifting plate back on when we go to put the engine into the car. We're just going to put this stuff on for now, semi-tight, because mainly just because I want to see this high ram intake on here. I've had it for way too long and I've just been waiting to put this thing on there. So we'll put it on for that, but also to help us seal up the engine, and we'll just make sure everything fits together. So we'll go ahead and start on those. We're going to do the steam vent kit first. This is the Motion Raceworks hardline kit. Now this is specifically made to go under these high ram style intakes. If you have like a truck manifold or whatever, you can't use these. They do make a soft line kit that you can use instead, but these ones are made specifically to route underneath it here. So we have this. It came with little gaskets, so we'll start on this, and then we'll move to the intake. So we'll get started on that. Alright, I just went ahead and put a little piece of foam and some tape over the top of our head just so we make sure we don't drop anything in there. But we'll go ahead and start our steam vent kit. So the first thing we're going to do is the kit comes with 4 of these little blocks. We'll just take our bolt, drop it in right there, flip it upside down. We'll put our gasket on. The sealing side goes onto your non-bolt hole side. So we'll just push that down on there. And then we'll set it on the top of our head right here. Run our bolt down with a 5mm Allen wrench. Alright, so that one's good. And then we'll just go ahead and do the other 3. You want one on each of the 4 corners. So we'll get those done real quick. Now that all 4 of our blocks are on, we can go ahead and install all these little 9-degree fittings. So if you look at this fitting, you have one side is an AN and one side is an MPT. We can tell because the AN has this big 45 or whatever degree angle it is on the front, and the MPT is tapered. So on these fittings, an AN fitting never gets Teflon tape on it. But you want to put a Teflon tape on the MPT fitting, so it'll look like that. So we'll screw our MPT side into the block, and we'll leave them a little loose, that way we can spin it to line everything up whenever we go to do it. So we'll just put one into each block. And you can go look at Motion Raceworks' website to see the benefits of these kits. But basically what it does, it connects all 4 of your corners for your coolant. So that way when you have steam from your coolant lines, it doesn't collect in a pocket somewhere in the head and cause problems. It connects everything all together and it runs the steam right to your radiator. Then we can take this block and we'll do the same thing. Just screw these in. There's a hole on the front, so go facing forward like this. I believe we want our back side ones facing back and our front one's facing forward like that. So something like that on each side. Okay, now that we have our block put together, let's go ahead and screw in our hard lines. They're marked which side's which. So this is our front driver's side. So we'll put it in like this. Screw this in. And then match it up with our block. Like this. Now I'm going to do Okay, we have all 4 of them screwed in. We'll just go back and tighten everything down with an AN wrench. Lastly, we can take our straight fitting, same thing, a little bit of Teflon tape on the MPT side, and we will screw it in to the front of our block right here. I know my hands are in the way and you probably can't see, but okay, and then lastly we can just take our unmarked line, screw it into the front of that fitting. I'm gonna run it to the driver's side just for now. Just put it on there like that. We can adjust it later. This side will go into our radiator eventually, whenever we get it in the car. Okay, there we have our steam vent kit installed. Looks nice. We'll wait till we put this on for good to take our stickers off, just in case we need them again. But it's on there. So now we can move on to the intake. I've been waiting for this. Okay, we went ahead and screwed all of our studs in for our high ram. We can now set our base on it. One thing to note is our base right here. If you'll notice this back side, we have that triangle with those holes. We're going to put that on the back side of the engine. So, we'll set it down over these studs. Like that. And normally, there's O-ring slots on your intake ports. Normally you want to put an O-ring in there, but we're gonna, like I said, we're taking this off again, so we'll just leave them off for now. So we have it set on there. Everything's lined up. We'll just go ahead and put a couple nuts on our studs, and we'll be good to go there. With our nuts now on, we would typically torque these down to 50 and then 106 inch-pounds in a torque sequence order that Holly gives us. We would then cut our O-ring for this top right here. We're going to go ahead and skip all that for now. We'll wait till we do the final assembly to do it. But for now, we'll just go ahead and grab our top. We'll line it up and set it on there. And then we have some bolts. We'll just go ahead and run those in finger tight. Alright, we're now on the back side of our intake. As you can see, we have this little flange here with all these holes. We're going to go ahead and install our map sensor back here. So we're going to be running the GM 3-bar map sensor. There's the part number. There it is right there. Go ahead and pull it out real quick. Just like that. So just press it in. And we need to find a bolt to screw in right there, because it must not have came with one. So let's go ahead and get a bolt, put it in there, and then that'll be good. Now that we have our map sensor in, we're just going to go ahead and plug these 3 NPT holes for now. We might put a couple sensors in them later, but for now we'll just go ahead and put some pipe plugs in them. Okay guys, we're back the next day. As you can see, we got our push rods in, and we have the correct length, 7.375. So we'll go ahead and put these in. And the only thing we're going to do is we're just going to take a little bit of our assembly lube and just put a drop right on the top right there. Then we'll put that side down on our lifter. So put one there. And we'll just go down the line and keep doing them. Now that we have our correct length push rods in, we can go ahead and put our rockers on. But first, we're going to go ahead and color in the top of the valve right here. We're going to check our rocker arm position. And really, you kind of want to use machinist die. I don't know where mine is at the moment, so we're going to use a Sharpie. It'll work just fine. So we'll just color those in. And now we can go ahead and put our rockers on. And when we put these rockers on, before we do anything, we just want to snug them all up. So we'll just run it down. Okay, the best way I've found to do it is we can go ahead and turn our engine over. We want this valve to come all the way up. So, if you'll see, it's going down. And then right here we start coming up. So So we're all the way up right there. We'll turn it just a little bit more. We'll grab our torque wrench. And you want to tighten these down to 22 foot-pounds. I do 25 when using aftermarket stuff. I think it works a little bit better. So, alright. And then we'll just go ahead and do the same thing on all the rockers. So we have our next one right here. Alright, so we're going down. We came up. And we went a little bit past it. Now we can tighten this one down to 25 foot-pounds. Now that we have all of our rockers torqued down, all we need to do is just rotate the engine a couple times. Watch everything. Make sure they're all working. Now that we've turned the engine over a couple times, we can go ahead and just zip our rockers off and check our wear pattern. So, again, get you in here a little closer where you can see. If you will notice, our wear pattern right there, we are pretty centered on the center of our valve. That's what we want. We want it to be centered, or we want it to be a little bit on the high side up here. But we look pretty good there. We'll go ahead and take the rest of them off, check them, and see how they look. Okay, so we went ahead and checked our Sharpie lines. Everything looks good there. So we will just wipe that Sharpie off. And then we'll go ahead and reassemble everything just like we did. The only difference this time, before we put our rocker trays on, we'll put just a dab of assembly lube on the top of our push rods. We'll then set our rockers back into place. We want to go ahead and put just a little bit of, oh, that was too much. We want to go ahead and put just a little bit of Loctite on our bolts before we put them in. Make sure they don't back out from the vibration of the engine. Now that we have all of our rockers on and torqued down, the last thing we're going to do is we're just going to take a little bit of engine oil and pour it in there. Get our springs a little bit. Alright, here we have our valve covers. I'll just go ahead and put them on without showing you guys. Man, it's pretty simple. 4 bolts to the top. These are aftermarket Speedway Motorsports, I think, just cheaper ones. The only thing special about them is I welded in a -10AN fitting right here to go to our catch can. And then the real important thing is you want to weld in some sort of baffle back here so all your oil doesn't go in here. I just took a piece of 1/8 inch aluminum, bent 2 little legs on it, tacked it in. So we have one there. There's our fitting, and we have one right here. Same thing, there's the baffle on the bottom. So we'll go ahead and just put our gaskets in here, run our bolts in, and bolt our valve covers on. And then we'll be good to go there. Alright guys, and there we have it. Our complete 6.7 Stroker LS. Super happy with how everything came out. Just finished giving you this quick walk around. The only thing I'm not super happy about are these valve covers. I had a lot of running on these back sides here. I don't know if you can see it or not, but I'm not super happy with them. I might pull them back off. There you can see a little bit better on that side. I'm not sure if it was like the paint was expired or maybe it was me. I bought 2 cans of this VHT wrinkle paint. I did use the first can to do my front cover and valley cover, and they turned out fairly good, I think. And then I used the second can to do these valve covers. So maybe that second can was bad, or maybe it was just me. But we might go ahead and pull these back off here and paint them black. But for now, they're on there. Other than that, I'm super happy. There's still a couple more things to do. We need to throw some spark plugs, some injectors. We need to get all our front accessories on. Still waiting on that balancer to come in. But for now, it's sealed up and we're good to go. So we'll end it right here on this video. Thank you guys for watching. Appreciate it. Come back next time and we're going to get started on this Turbo 400 transmission. I just called today, ordered all my parts. We're going to go with a Jake's Performance Stage 3 rebuild kit. We'll do a new ATI bell housing, new valve body, deep pan, the whole 9 yards. Nice new converter coming. So we'll go ahead and get started on that here in a couple weeks, hopefully. So stay tuned for the video on that. And once again, guys, thanks you for watching, and we'll see you next time.